I always thought I'd stumbled onto the deal of a lifetime when I found that Vermont cabin. Rental for winter break, a whole week for just $200, tucked deep inside a forest that barely had a name on the map. The pictures showed a peaceful wooden cabin surrounded by tall pines, snow piled on the roof, and a sunset glowing behind the trees. The owner seemed laid back to no deposit, no questions, total freedom. Looking back now, every single one of those things should have been a red flag. My friend and I reached the property around sunset on a freezing Friday in late January. The long driveway to the cabin looked like it hadn't been plowed in days. We had no choice but to leave the car partially buried and hike the rest of the way through snow that swallowed us up to the knees. My buddy complained the entire time, dragging his duffel like a spoiled kid forced to go camping. When the cabin finally came into view, I was honestly shocked. It looked exactly like the listing photos. 2 stories, dark timber exterior, just a perfect little winter hideout. But then we noticed something that stopped both of us cold. Smoke. Fresh smoke curling out of the chimney. The owner had clearly stated the cabin would be empty and cold as hell when we got there, but warm smoke meant someone had been inside recently, maybe still was. My friend tried to rationalize it, saying maybe someone came early to heat the place for us, which made absolutely no sense for a $200 rental in the middle of nowhere. But at that point we were half frozen and desperate for warmth. The front door was unlocked, just like the owner said it would be, but the moment we stepped inside, every instinct in me screamed that something was wrong. Boot prints on the entry mat, a damp coat on the hook, snow melting off a pair of winter boots by the door, a coffee mug sitting on the kitchen counter, still warm. I called out, thinking maybe a caretaker was around. Silent. My friend checked downstairs while I headed up the creaking wooden steps. The master bedroom didn't look recently used. It looked like someone was living there. Clothes stuffed into drawers, toiletries laid out on the sink, a half-read novel on the nightstand with a bookmark halfway through. I reached for my phone, ready to call the owner, but of course, no service. My buddy and I argued for a minute, but in the end, with the snow starting to fall harder outside, we decided to wait. We figured maybe whoever was here before us hadn't cleared out yet. My friend started a fire in the living room while I tried to wrap my head around the situation. That's when I found the journal, a leather-bound notebook lying in the center of the coffee table like someone had set it down only hours ago. The last entry was dated 2 days before we arrived. The handwriting was shaky and frantic. It talked about scratching beneath the floorboards, about footsteps on the roof at night, and about feeling watched, even when the writer swore they were alone. By the time we finished reading, the sun was gone and the storm outside had turned into a white wall of chaos. We were officially stuck. We locked every door, every window, even pushed a table against the back entrance. The temperature kept dropping, and even with a fire burning, we could see our breath fog in the air. Then the power went out. Darkness swallowed the house, except for the soft glow of the fireplace. My friend was pacing, checking his phone every 2 minutes like service would magically appear. I sat still, trying to keep my breathing steady. That's when we heard it. 3 knocks. Slow, heavy, on the back door. We froze. My friend grabbed a kitchen knife, the biggest one he could find, while I crept toward the nearest window. Snow was falling so hard I couldn't see 5 feet out. The knocks came again, 3 taps, that same rhythm, like whoever was out there wasn't rushing. Then the knocking moved. To the side wall, the same 3 knocks. Then the next wall. We weren't hearing branches or wind. Someone was circling the cabin, moving with intention, making sure we knew they were there. We put out the fire as fast as we could, scattering snow over it until only glowing embers remained. If someone was out there, we didn't want to give them a silhouette to aim at through the windows. The knocking pattern continued, slow, patient, circling, over and over. 20 minutes felt like hours. Then suddenly, silence. Complete, painful silence. We spent the rest of the night sitting back to back in the corner of the cabin, holding our breath at every sound, every shift of the old wood, every gust of wind. When daylight finally cracked through the storm clouds, my friend bolted upright. He needed to know if last night had been real or just paranoia. We stepped outside and everything inside me dropped. Footprints, hundreds of them. Deep, fresh tracks, circling the cabin in perfect loops. 15, maybe more. Someone had walked around the cabin over and over again in the snowstorm, tracing the same path. But there was something even worse than that. Every single loop began and ended at the same spot. the crawlspace entrance beneath the front porch. My friend got on his hands and knees and shined his phone light into the darkness under the cabin. He stopped moving, then slowly looked back at me, his face drained of all color. Someone had been living under the cabin. A sleeping bag, canned food, a lantern, stacks of books and magazines, footprints leading in and out. They had been there for weeks, maybe months. We didn't even go back inside. We didn't grab clothes or gear, nothing. We dug out the car with our bare hands and slid our way down the unplowed path until we hit the main road. No one talked during the drive. We were too shaken to form full sentences. When we finally got cell service, I called the owner. He acted confused, claimed the cabin had been empty all winter, said we must have gone to the wrong place. But the emails, the maps, the confirmation, everything matched. The cops took our report seriously. What they found made everything so much worse. The crawl space wasn't just occupied, it was modified, insulated, shelves installed, a heater rigged illegally. Whoever had lived there wasn't passing through. They had set up a permanent residence. Then the worst discovery of all, photos, dozens of them. Photos of guests taken through the windows, people cooking, reading, sleeping, all unaware they were being watched. They found the car belonging to the journal's writer 3 miles away. She's still missing. The police later uncovered 2 more cabins within 5 miles, each with crawl spaces, modified the same way. Someone had been moving between them, watching the people who stayed there. The owner is facing charges for knowingly renting the place out. But the person who lived under the cabin, they were never found. And sometimes I wonder, when the snow falls at night in some quiet forest, is someone else listening to those same 3 knocks? My dad had been hyped about this ice fishing trip since October. Just him, me, his beat-up pickup. In a week at his buddy's cabin on the Minnesota side of Lake Superior. I was 17, and if I'm being honest, I would have rather spent winter break doing literally anything else. But when my dad gets excited, like really excited, borderline obsessed you, don't say no. This is the man who watches fishing shows like their championship games and reads water temperature charts for fun. We left early on a Tuesday morning in February. The lake was locked in ice locals, said at least 3 feet thick. Dad's buddy had given us specific coordinates. He swore the walleye were practically leaping through the ice out there. We drove about a mile from shore, the truck rattling over the uneven ice, and set up our pop-up shanty. Nothing fancy, just enough to cut the wind when it's -15, and your eyelashes start freezing together. By noon, we hadn't caught a single thing, not even a nibble. Dad didn't care though. He was in pure nostalgia mode, telling stories about ice fishing with his own father back in the 80s. I was half listening, half wondering if frostbite could hit you through boots. Then I noticed something that made me straighten up. About 100 yards away, a shanty, not a pop-up like ours. This was a full wooden ice house, the kind built like a mini cabin on skis. And here's what threw me. It wasn't there when we arrived. The entire lake had been empty. I was 100% sure. I pointed it out to Dad. He looked confused, said he'd been watching the ice the whole time and hadn't seen anyone set it up. And there were no tracks leading to it. No tire marks, no snowmobile trail, no footprints, nothing. Just a perfectly placed shanty, sitting on untouched snow. Dad decided we should check it out. Maybe say hi, swap fishing luck stories. He believes every stranger is just a friend he hasn't met yet. I followed him, but something felt wrong. The silence around that shanty felt heavy, like the lake was holding its breath. The door was slightly open, creaking gently in the wind. Dad called out. His voice carried across the frozen emptiness. No reply. He pulled the door open wider, and what we saw didn't make sense. Inside was a fully set-up fishing station. 2 holes drilled through the ice. Lines dropped into pitch-black water below. A portable heater humming softly. A thermos on the table steam, still rising from the open lid. A bucket of fresh bait. A half-eaten sandwich. Someone had been there minutes ago. Dad touched the thermos. It was hot. Everything was real. Everything except the person. Where the hell did they go? He whispered. I stepped further inside, looking for anything gear, a coat, initials etched on the wall, anything to make this make sense. That's when I heard it. At first, it sounded like the ice shifting, but then it sharpened. A scream. Someone was screaming from beneath the ice. My dad heard it too. His face drained instantly. It wasn't random noise. It was human. It was desperate. We dropped to our knees, pressing our ears against the ice. The screams echoed upward hollow, terrified, trapped, and then they started moving, sliding under us like something was swimming beneath the frozen surface. Dad shouted, "Hey, we're here. Hold on." His voice just bounced back. We called 911. The dispatcher said rescue was on the way. The screaming continued 15, maybe 20 minutes. Then it grew weaker. Then it stopped. Completely. Those next 25 minutes, waiting for rescue. Worst of my life. When the rescue team finally arrived, they drilled holes, dropped sonar cameras, sent in divers. They searched for 6 hours. They found nothing. No body, no clothing, no air pocket. Nothing in the water but clear, empty darkness. One diver said it was impossible water, that cold preserves everything. Bodies don't vanish. But the shanty, that was real. They ran the registration. It belonged to a man reported missing 3 weeks earlier. He had gone ice fishing alone. His truck had been found on shore keys, still in the ignition. He never made it home. Authorities assumed he'd fallen through thin ice somewhere. But now there was something far worse to consider. 2 weeks later, another fisherman reported the same thing. Same shanty, same spot, same steaming thermos, same screams beneath the ice. Rescue teams searched, found nothing. A month later, it happened again. The county tried everything. Towed the shanty, sank it, dismantled it. Every time, it reappeared. Same structure, same setup, same terrifying pattern. They eventually closed off that whole section of the lake. Didn't matter. Reports kept coming from people who ignored the warnings. Dad never went back to ice fishing. Sold every rod, reel, and auger he owned. Sometimes at night, when everything is quiet, I swear I still hear that sound, fists pounding on ice, muffled screams beneath frozen water. They never recovered the missing fisherman's body, never explained the repeating shanty, never solved what lived beneath that ice. Lake Superior keeps its secrets, and some things aren't meant to be found.